Hey guys, so here I am in the dark. I'm even wearing sunglasses because I know it's about to get sunny. But here I am coming to you from the dark because today we're going to talk about moon phases. Take off my shades for this part. And here we go. I'll turn on a little temporary sun for us. So the first thing is we're going to take a few notes on moon phases. And we're going to go through these relatively quickly. As I'm talking in this video, make sure you pause and make sure you get this stuff written down. I'm going to go pretty quickly because I expect that you are pausing, writing down, writing down. So I'm not going to allow a lot of wait time as far as that goes. I'm trying to get that so it's not quite so reflective on those words. There we go. All right. So moon phases is something that, we've all seen the moon make different shapes. Most of us don't understand why that is. So here we're going to talk about it. So top of your page, I'd like you to label this page phases of the moon. Okay. I'd like the first heading to be sun, moon, and earth. So the first thing we need to understand is that the sun, the moon, and the earth have got some things going on, right? So here's a little model. But the first bullet point here says that the moon orbits the earth. Okay, so if this is the earth and this is the moon orbits the earth. Okay, while that's happening, this is going to be our sun here. See, it's even got sunlight. While that's happening, the earth is orbiting the sun. Okay, so we have the moon orbiting the earth, and then number two, we have the earth bringing the moon with it is orbiting the sun. And depending on the alignment, the moon looks different from Earth. So depending on where the moon, the Earth, and the sun are, how they're lined up, that's what changes what the moon looks like to us, okay? So I'm gonna go through these notes. We're gonna write some stuff down. We're gonna continue through, and then I'm gonna show you some examples using that model and using another model that I think will help this make more sense, but I'd like to write it down first. So moon phases, okay, that's our next heading here. So the moon reflects light from the sun. The moon doesn't make its own light, which isn't obvious unless somebody tells you, but any light you see from the moon is actually being reflected from the sun. And half of the moon, right? So you draw this diagram here. This is half the moon is always light. Half of the moon is always facing the sun. Okay, so if you draw this little diagram, I've got the sun here, I've got the earth here, and then I've got these circles are the moon, right? That's the moon orbiting the earth. So if you look at this, it only really makes sense if you look at it this way, but half of the moon is always facing the sun. So half of the moon is always light. So I drew these circles, I put a line through them, and I shaded the half that's facing away from the earth, okay? So right here, the moon is getting light, the moon is getting light, this half of the moon is light, this half of the moon is light. So half the moon always has light. One of the things you hear is of the dark side of the moon. There's no dark side of the moon all the time. Always half of the moon is getting light and half of it is dark. And it just depends on what angle we see. Okay, the next bullet point says Earth sees a different angle during the 29.5-day lunar cycle. So that means it takes the moon 29.5 days to orbit the Earth. Every day it's in a little bit different position, so we get a little bit different angle at it, and that's what makes it look different, okay? Down here, we're talking about the names of the moon phases, and then I'm gonna go to our little model and show you how it works and what it actually looks like. So what I did here is I drew 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 circles. Try to give a little more light here. And we're gonna draw in every moon phase, okay, and the names of those moon phases. So I started with our new moon. When you look up, the first part of the moon cycle is a new moon. You look up and you don't see a moon at all. So I called that new moon and I shaded that whole circle in. Second one, I drew a circle, and that's when we just see a little sliver of light. We call that a crescent moon. Okay, so the deal with naming moon phases is that we always name it according to the bright part of the moon. So if I can only see a little bit, less than half of the moon, that's a crescent moon. Okay, our next one is when you can just see half the moon. And that's what we call a quarter moon. I'm gonna explain why in a second. So I labeled that quarter. Next one, if the moon is over halfway lit up, we call that a gibbous. So I just shaded just a little bit over here. Then we have a full moon. Most of us know what that looks like. You're familiar with that. Okay, and then, so you'll notice this part of the cycle, there was a little bit of light, more light, all the way lit up. Now the opposite's gonna happen. Now shadow is gonna start covering the moon, also from the right to left. So as the shade comes over the moon, still we have over half of the moon lit up, so we call that a gibbous moon. Okay, then we have half the moon covered, we call that a quarter moon. Then when there's just a little bit left, we call that a crescent. Now, there's two more labels on here. This first part of the moon phase, we call that our waxing phase. Waxing means to like add or get brighter. So waxing is when the moon is getting brighter. If I look up each night during a waxing phase, I'll see a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more of the moon. Till we get to full moon. And then the opposite happens, right? Then the shadow starts coming over from right to left. We call that the waning phase. That means the bright part of the moon is getting smaller each night. Okay, last diagram. Then we'll get into the demonstration. So down here, I drew a sun, I drew an Earth, and then I drew my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 moons around it. Again, that's kind of simulating that the moon is orbiting. There's not actually, obviously, that many moons. It's one, and these are different positions. So I drew it all the way around, and I just labeled what I labeled here. So here's my new moon. This is describing what we see from Earth. Crescent moon, first quarter, our gibbous, full, gibbous, third quarter, crescent, and new. Now, you'll notice that I colored these moons with half of the moon getting light and half getting dark. This isn't what we see from Earth. This is just what the moon actually looks like. We could have a bird's eye view looking above the moon and the Earth. Okay? And then I added this arrow here and said, this is our waxing phase. If you have a different color, it'd be good to do this. So this is our waxing phase where the moon is getting brighter. This is our waning phase where the moon is getting dimmer each night. Okay, here we are back in the dark. I've turned off that sunlight and I'm going to turn on a different sun. So here is my sun, my moon, and my Earth. Okay, like we said before, the moon orbits the Earth orbits the sun, so on and so forth. So what I'm going to try to do is give you an example. I know we wrote all this stuff down. This is a really hard thing to understand unless you can really see a good solid example. So this right here, okay, is showing how the moon is always half lit up. Okay, so I'm going to turn this toward you. From the top view, you can see that the moon is half illuminated. I'm going to try to hold this so you can see it. Okay, the moon has half of a light. The moon has half light. The moon has half light. The moon has half light. Okay, so the moon always has light on half of it and half of it's dark. Now, what I said about the point of view from Earth, okay, so if this is what the moon looks like from the top view, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn this so you are looking at the moon from the point of the view from Earth. Okay, so if you're Earth and this is, here's you, you're looking towards me. Right now, you see about a half moon, right? Okay, but as the moon orbits the Earth, okay, we can see the changing of the golf ball. So right now, sorry, I'm going to adjust this just a little so it's straight up and down. Right now, half of the moon has light on it, but from your point of view on Earth, looking at the moon, we only see the side that's dark. Okay, so as the moon orbits, we see just a little bit of light. Oh, sorry, I'm doing this wrong. As the moon orbits the Earth, from our point of view, we're getting a little bit more light, a little bit more light, a little bit more light. Okay, now we're at like a quarter moon. Okay, now over half of the moon is illuminated, so we call that a gibbous. Okay, by the time the sun is on the opposite side of the Earth and the moon, that's when we see a full moon. And the reason we see a full moon is because the moon is actually a little bit higher on its orbit than the Earth. You would think that we would get a shadow here, that the Earth would be in the way, but it's not. The moon is a little bit taller. So when the sun's on the opposite side from the Earth, we get a full moon. Okay, now as the moon continues, sorry, I'm going the wrong way, continues to orbit, I'm going to try to keep this at your point of view. Now we start to see the shadow of the moon go from right to left, okay, right to left, until we get all the way back to, okay, there's our last little bit of crescent moon until we get to a new moon where we don't see the light anymore. Okay, so I'm going to move it back right here. Okay, so from your point of view, the moon is, this is what we'd call a waning crescent because the shadow is on the right side of the moon. The moon is getting darker each night, and we only see a tiny slice of light left. Okay, if I were to rotate this like this, we would see that still half of the moon is illuminated. We're just not seeing it. Okay, but from our point of view, we only see a little bit of that view. Okay. So again, there's our new moon. Okay, when all three are lined up, as the moon orbits the Earth, we get a waxing crescent. Waxing means the moon is getting brighter each week. Here we're at about a quarter moon. Okay, as the moon gets to where it's over half illuminated, we have a waxing gibbous. That means the moon is over half light and getting brighter each night. Okay, we get a full moon when we're all lined up. And then as the moon continues to orbit, we start to see our waning phase where the moon is getting darker each night, okay, till we get back to our new moon phase. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna look at one more point of view. So again, what we just saw is that even though the moon is always half lit up, depending on our point of view from Earth, we see something different, okay? So as the moon orbits the Earth, we get a different point of view of the Earth. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn on a bigger sun and give you a slightly different point of view. Okay, so here's gonna be our bigger sun. You might wanna cover your eyes because it's gonna be bright. I'm gonna grab my moon here. Here's the bigger sun. Boom. All right, so what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna give you one more kind of point of view. So what I just showed was sun, moon, Earth, and I kind of rotated this around so you always had the point of view from the moon. Now your camera is going to be Earth, our point of view from the Earth. I'm going to use a tennis ball, and that's going to be the moon, and then this is going to be our sun. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my favorite beverage, which is Jarritos. I'm going to set it right here. Hold up my moon. Okay, so right now, from your point of view, again, here's you. You are Earth. That's you. You're Earth. You're looking at the moon. Okay, the Earth is spinning, and right now it's nighttime, and you happen to be facing the moon. The moon is right now in between the Earth and the sun, so you don't see any of the light. Even though there is half of the moon that has light on it, you don't see it. Okay, as the moon orbits the Earth, what you're going to see. Okay, as the moon is rotating, orbiting the Earth, what you can see now is a little bit of light. Okay, because from your point of view, you're getting to see more of the side of the moon that's illuminated. As the moon continues to rotate, okay, you're going to get to about a quarter moon. Okay, moon keeps rotating. Now we're over half illuminated. Okay, until you get in between the sun and the moon, and what you see now is a full moon. So the half that I'm looking at right now doesn't have any light, but from your point of view from Earth, all you are seeing is light. Okay, and as the moon continues to rotate, I'm going to try to get out of the way. Now we start to see the shadow come on the moon. So from your point of view, the moon is getting darker and darker and darker. Here we're at about our third quarter moon. The reason we call it a quarter moon is because if you look at this as a circle, this is 3/4 of the way around until you get back facing the sun. Now there's not much light left on this moon, and it's facing the sun. And you see only shadow. That's our new moon phase. Okay. So that was kind of three. We did our notes. We did our little example of, oh, that thing's bright. Tell you what, it's almost like it's the sun or something. We did our notes. We did our example where I showed you three-dimensionally. And then this is from your point of view, how moon phases work. So again, The reason we see from Earth a different moon every night is because we're seeing a little bit different angle as the moon orbits the Earth. Okay, gets brighter, brighter, brighter. Until we're facing all the way away from the sun. We get a full moon. We keep rotating. It's darker, 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 darker until we get back to a completely dark new moon.